Hi everyone, I'm Jim Tolles. I'm a spiritual teacher, as many of you know. I blog at spiritualawakeningprocess.com and I share videos on my Jim Tolles YouTube channel. For this video, I want to talk about the human potential for wisdom, and it follows up my last video about the human potential for kindness. As a quick reminder, please feel free to subscribe and to like and to share the link of this video and to check out other links below this video that I've created. Like the last video about kindness, if we want to discover wisdom, we dissolve the ego. And it's critical to understand that wisdom is not a set of ideas. Not just ideas anyway. A lot of times people try and gather ideas, but they don't really understand how they work. I often describe this like learning intellectually how to dance, but never actually dancing. You can imagine your body doing all kinds of moves and maneuvers in your mind, but when you try to do it with your body, you discover certain realities. You discover limitations. You also discover certain potentials that your mind might not have thought of. When you bring the mind and the body, as well as the heart and subtle energy together in union, you can dance in all sorts of different ways, and it's creative and free. You discover things about your body that you hadn't known before, and you can use the mind to explore other ways you might use the body, and there's this testing that can go on between the two. As always, the mind should follow reality. In this case, in this metaphor, follow the body. And that really is a beautiful metaphor for wisdom. Many of you get drawn to spiritual teachers at a certain point anyway, when you start to feel that they actually know what they're talking about. Initially, a lot of people are drawn to all sorts of different things just because it reinforces their ego. But when you speak from wisdom, that space of actually knowing the thing you're talking about and how it actually works, there's a different resonance, and it calls to different people. I really want to emphasize that we're not just collecting ideas. You can read all the books you want, you can listen to all the spiritual teachers you want, and it doesn't make you wiser. It just gives you a whole bunch of ideas. To find wisdom, we turn within. We dissolve the ego. We begin to be curious about ourselves. And there is just immense potential for wisdom in human beings. So much. And wisdom is often very practical. We do what's needed in the present moment. It's not fantastical. It's not making up stories about stuff that supposedly exists. Wisdom doesn't need to take a lot of positions in terms of what is or is not possible. It just stays in that space of openness and receiving. It stays in the space of awareness where we see what's going on and we respond to that. But we can't really do that effectively until we understand ourselves, and that's where wisdom starts. Understanding yourself is the doorway to true wisdom, because it teaches all kinds of things like humility and compassion. We all go through these phases when we're serious about this path of realizing things about ourselves that we did not know. That creates humility. It creates compassion as we realize lots of other people in our lives don't know why they're doing what they're doing, just like we haven't known what we're doing. Just running on this unconscious ego autopilot. As we realize things about ourselves, That combination of humility and compassion mixed with intellectual understanding are key ingredients that make wisdom, because we don't use our understanding as a 2x4, a baseball bat, to hit other people over the head with it. That's not wisdom. We're not in this to be right or wrong. That's an ego game. The ego is like, I'm going to be right about the spiritual path. Wisdom doesn't care. Wisdom comes from that space of awareness. Wisdom comes from selflessness. I mentioned this a lot in the last video, and I'll continue to mention this a lot. Selflessness is critical. The selfish ego is just in it to gain more things and have more ideas and be able to tell everybody in its life like all the stuff it knows. Or it can play a different game where it's like the silent knower of like, I know so much more than everyone. It's like, these are all ego agendas built upon deeper ego core issues. Wisdom just sees what is. So we also don't necessarily see what we want to see. At least not what our ego wants to see. That's why we have to keep giving up the ego, because the ego will get in the way. It'll be like, I don't want to see this about my partner. I don't want to see this about myself. I don't want to see this about my kids, about my mom, my dad, my uncle, my government, my community, my city. There are so many things that we don't want to see that it's incredible. People are wandering around blind to obvious realities. And that's kind of a funny thing about a lot of wisdom, is like it's not that deeply different than reality. And it's because it is reality. It's actually our fantasies about reality are deeply different than what's actually going on. So sometimes wisdom is like looking out your window and saying it's a sunny day with a blue sky. But with everybody else who's so caught up in the ego agendas that they have, it's like, no, it's a green sky. Or it's dark out. Or there are purple unicorns floating around. Right? Because they're just making up whatever story it is that they want to believe about the present moment. Right? You can have the positive thinkers always seeing things through the rose-colored glasses. You can have the pessimists always looking at things that are bad. Wisdom is just seeing what is, and then we can act from it. And our actions tend to be direct and practical and often very simple. And guess what that builds upon it? We waste less energy, for one. Less energy worrying about things because we can see what the situation is and we respond to it, whatever it is. Leads to deeper appreciations of humanity, particularly deeper levels of human unconsciousness and what it does. We're not blind to it. We don't light wash people into thinking they're better than they are. Everyone has choices they make. We may all be beautiful beings at our cores, but unless we act from that space in the world, then that doesn't really mean very much. And wisdom allows us to see if somebody is violent or hooked on a substance or something else, and we respond to those situations as we see them arising, not as we'd like them to be. Wisdom, like true kindness, ripples out into society in ways that we'll never really know. And so, once again, we let go of any attachment to the fruits of our actions. We give up ideas about right or wrong. And there's a deeper faith to wisdom. Just a faith in what you see, which almost doesn't even feel like faith, really, because you're just looking at a blue sky on a sunny day. And that inspires people. It starts to touch things inside of people that are dormant. And that can lead to a kind of spreading of wisdom where people start to say, oh, you're right. It is sunny out. Why didn't I see that before? It's simple stuff like that. And that the person wasn't trying to convince the other person, oh, it's sunny. That's not wisdom. That's once again another ego game. It's just this simple thing of how you respond to life that other people start to pay attention because you're looking at reality. It's natural for other people to start to look at reality. It gets more and more difficult to be around somebody and to have imaginary conversations if they're talking about reality. The person either has to leave or eventually they kind of come around. They can try and fight for a while, but the sky is blue. It's a sunny day. It takes a lot more energy to deny that and to say, actually, the sky is full of gravy boats and hot dogs, right? And to try and see situations not as they are, but as you want them to. So there's a natural way that just speaking wisdom, acting from wisdom, impacts others. Brings people back to reality, naturally. If they don't want to, they don't. Wisdom doesn't force this. But as more people do that around you, right, that has larger impacts on society. And the potential for wisdom leads to a potential for deeper transformation in society itself. But once again, this is not something we try and make happen because wisdom doesn't force things. And everybody has their choices to make. And what matters more is your choice. Your choice to know yourself, to become wise about yourself first. Because through that wisdom, your illusions drop away. You see life more for what it is. And then you can interact with a sunny day in any way you so choose.